Now, over in Great Britain, as you know, there is still a huge fury going on over the Brexit. There are all these editorials saying, well, really, the referendum isn't buying. Parliament should decide, and so forth and so on. And there's been a big fight over who's going to be the new Prime Minister of Great Britain. Cameron is actually going to resign Wednesday. Said it was going to be later in the year. Now he's changed his mind. He's going to resign Wednesday following the departure of Andrea Leadsom from the race for Prime Minister. So now it's automatic. Theresa May will become the next Prime Minister of Great Britain, and she's firmly on board keeping Great Britain enslaved to the European Union. So there's been a lot of dirty back-channel politics going on to make sure that the Prime Minister of Britain is opposed to the Brexit. But they ought to take a look at what's going on in Germany, France, and even in the streets of the United States of America. People have been pushed to the breaking point. The next government edict that says, to heck with what you want, we're going to do what we want, could be the spark that starts another revolution. This push for a global dictatorship, a global private central bank, has created a political climate conducive to a global revolution, where all the people in all these nations bring down their oligarchs all at the same time. I think that would be a good thing. Because the money junkies are like a hydra. You kill one of them off, two more will grow and take its place. You've got to take out the heart, and the heart of the money junkies are private central banks issuing public currency as loan at interest. That has to be killed, or the hydra will come back. Now, regardless of whether Theresa May is going to be able to overturn the will of the British people and not have a revolution on her hands, Hungary has already set their date for their European Union referendum. It will be October 2nd on voting to leave. Now, on the side of the Brexit, as you know, there's been all this dire warnings and fear-mongering. Oh, without Europe, Britain will crumble. Britain will have nothing to deal with. You seem to forget the British Commonwealth of Nations still reaches around the globe to long-time allies and trading partners like Canada and Australia. Britain was never all that dependent on Europe in the first place. Britain has already opened up a yuan trading center in the London financial district. If they're cut off from the euro, Britain could shift over to the yuan, and that's going to be another blow against the U.S. dollar. China is looking at a free trade deal with Great Britain that'll boost Britain's manufacturing. And because of the drop in the British pound post-Brexit vote, Britain's products are more attractive on the international marketplace. They could actually come out of this doing very, very well, certainly better than the rest of Europe that's still enslaved to that European Central Bank. And there's a lesson of history for all of you to pay attention to. Nations that are enslaved to private central banks cannot economically compete with nations that are not, because of that huge amount of wealth and work product siphoned off by the private central bankers for their own pleasure, to feed their own addiction. That's why anytime there is a nation that breaks free of a private central bank, immediately they will make war on that nation to bring them back into the servitude of the private central banks. That's why they engineered that war against the Nazis, because the Nazis got rid of the private central bank imposed on Germany by the Treaty of Versailles at the end of World War I, and they issued a value-based currency, and Germany's economy lit up. It was called the German miracle. And people around the world were saying, wow, we got to copy their system because it's working. It's working for the people. And the private central banker said, that will be enough of that. Same reason European nations backed the Confederacy during America's Civil War. Because of Lincoln's issuance of the greenback, the government furnishing its own money and refusing to borrow it at interest from a privately owned bank. That was a major, major threat. And the only reason those European countries were not able to supply the Confederacy to win the war. And by the way, at one point, France and Britain actually considered invading the U.S. on the behalf of the Confederacy. The only reason they didn't is Russia was protecting the U.S. coasts. Little bit of Civil War history you probably never understood, because Russia had just broken free of private central banking and adopted a system like Lincoln's. And they understood the real war was not against North and South or Europe and America. The real war was against public banking versus private central banking. And that is the heart of virtually every conflict for the last 3 centuries. Now, over in Germany, the German people are now demanding an EU referendum. They want out. Merkel's being told it's time to hold a Brussels vote. It's a huge amount of public outcry for this. The longer Merkel puts her foot down and stalls, the more arrogant and she's coming across. She's not going to survive her next re-election. Meanwhile, on the areas of immigration, the French riot police are in a battle with migrants in Calais. That's broken out into outright violence. The whole world's going crazy. Got to take a break.